headquarters of common sense.
Talk Radio.
Well, my big story I want to talk to you about today is the proposed reform in Scotland to the Gender Recognition Act.
Yes, of course.
And I think it's good to talk about it today on International Women's Day.
Yes, I'd forgotten about that.
I
Sorry,
know,
my apologies.
So there's
But not only had I forgotten about that story, I'd also forgotten it was International Women's Day.
Well, thank goodness
Many
for me.
happy returns to all women listening.
Thank goodness for me here to remind you. I mean, neither of us are really kind of big on celebrating international days or International Women's Day, but I think it's a good day to talk about this story.
Yes.
So the Westminster government has, I think, very wisely decided to leave safeguarding protections in place for when somebody who is transgender wants to change their gender.
Right.
But the Scottish government, under Nicola Sturgeon, has proposed to change the Gender Recognition Act. And at the moment, Scotland is consulting on this. So I'd urge everybody, you don't have to be Scottish. Anyone in the UK
So they haven't finally decided yet?
No, they've put forward proposals. And no doubt there'll be some kind of weaseling around and a compromise in the middle. But what they're saying is instead of living for 2 years in the gender you identify as...
Right.
You will go through a 3-month process of doing that. Then there's a 3-month kind of reflection period.
Cooling off period.
Cooling off. Well, there's not really, the idea is that once you've declared and said you're changing your gender, that you're supposed to mean it and it's forever.
What if nobody's listening to you when you say that? Does it still count?
It's a legal document. But the part that will be missing will be that medical diagnosis of
so you
gender
don't need
dysphoria.
that anymore.
Not in Scotland. That's the proposal. And there'd be no panel. So it will become simply a matter of self-identification.
Yes.
You declare it yourself. Now, there are a number of problems with this, and I can't believe I'm having to point it out. On the one side, to give balance, trans activists say that the process as it is at the moment is intrusive for transgender people who want to change their gender identity.
Well, because they have to go and see a doctor about it.
Because there's a medical process and it's 2 years. But something, even with the existing Act, what you have to do is live in your gender identity for 2 years. I haven't yet heard anyone explain what that means without resorting to sexist stereotypes.
Yes.
Because what does it mean to live in your acquired gender?
Right.
It's normally about things like hair and makeup and clothes and names and the kind of the
I mean, I get my
superficial
hair and
trappings.
makeup done every day now. Does that mean I have to change my gender?
Do you want to change your gender?
I'm not sure. What's in it for me?
Well,
I'm up for a, bit of a variety in life.
Well, let's get on to what's in it for some people.
Okay, then.
So some people, it makes them, eases their mental distress and it makes them happier to live in their self-identified gender.
Okay.
But what some women are concerned about is that women are going to lose protections around women-only spaces.
Yes.
Also, if Scotland's going to be different to the rest of the UK, it makes Scotland a kind of a trans Gretna Green, because the other thing they're going to do is bring the age down from 18 to 16.
Yes.
So at the age of 16, you can decide to change your gender, which means that if you are resident in Scotland, ordinarily resident, not there all the time, or you're Scottish and you live somewhere in the UK, it's still open to you. It's going to be open to everybody at Scottish universities.
I'm technically Scottish, so...
It will apply to you.
There you go.
Except I don't think you're 16, are you? So you
really.
You miss out on that part of the benefits.
What about this other thing that they're saying, which is that if you change your mind after the specific period that you weren't supposed to change your mind during, you can then be prosecuted, apparently?
Well, because you have to sign a legal declaration that you mean it, that you're intending to change your gender.
So if,
forever.
say, for example, 5 years later you decided it was a mistake, you can actually be prosecuted for a crime.
I don't think that's going to happen, because the thing is that people do change their mind. And it's another important angle to bring into this. I worked on a project in 2020 with detransitioners, women specifically who had thought they were trans men and then changed their mind.
Right.
Now, that regret is something that we don't quantify. Believe it or not, the NHS do not check how many people then change back to their original gender
They don't keep records
identification. No, they don't. But we think it's probably quite common. And without any way of tracking it, we don't know how much of an issue it's going to be. But having interviewed women who've done that, that sort of regret from detransition brings with it a lot of trauma. So I interviewed and photographed women who'd had double mastectomies, that had hysterectomies, had taken hormone therapy, and then they've changed their mind. And they can never really go back to who they used to be in every sense, emotionally and physically. So there's that to consider. By bringing the age down from 18 to 16, I mean, look, at the age of 16, somebody isn't allowed a tattoo, but we're
Right.
saying they'll be able to change their gender without their parents' permission, without even a medical diagnosis of dysphoria. I think there'll be a lot of parents who'd be concerned about the idea of that. But then also we lose protection in women's refuges, women-only spaces, women's prisons.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody has a gender recognition certificate and they identify as a woman, then they're housed in women's prisons. One thing that we're told is that predatory men won't use this to gain access to women, except I think they probably will. They already do.
Well, they already have, haven't they?
I mean, it's only a year ago that a police officer used his position to murder Sarah Everard. A couple of high-profile cases we've had of male transgender people who are sexual predators being in women's prisons.
Yeah.
There was Karen White in England who sexually assaulted 4 female prisoners. Barbie Kardashian in Ireland, I know that's Ireland, not the UK, but had a history of attacking women, violence towards women, including his own mother, was put in a women's prison. So this does happen.
Right.
At the moment, there have to be what's considered exceptional circumstances to house a male transgender prisoner in the male estate. Nobody is at the moment. They're put in women's prisons and they share women's communal spaces. And I think that's a really unfair thing to do to women prisoners.
Unwise, at the very least, to use a very understated sort of way of describing it. But also, the argument that they make, the SNP, for this not being a problem as such, is that predatory males are already out there and therefore, they will be predatory. However, that's not really the case if they're not in women's spaces, because they wouldn't normally be there. And if they're being put there because of their own choice, then clearly that's a problem, isn't it?
There are always going to be predatory men. Will there be predatory men that abuse this in order to get closer to women? Possibly. Experts have given that advice in the English Gender Recognition Act consultation, as it is. There was some research done among Scottish prison wardens, and there were female wardens who said they're very uncomfortable with strip searching male transgender prisoners. It's not even just about the prisoners. I mean, one of them said something quite telling. They said they were very uncomfortable with doing male transgender strip searches, but what you have to do is look past the body, pretend the body isn't there. So she's kind of putting it very clearly. You have to look past the evidence of your own eyes, not look at the body, in order to do a strip search on a male body. It's a very bizarre situation we're in. So I think it's personally, I think it's unwise to drop the safeguarding protection that is there of living in your acquired gender for 2 years and having a medical diagnosis.
Yes.
It just adds that bit of security that keeps a balance in life that ultimately benefits women, but benefits some trans people, because then we're all more comfortable with each other's status in society.
Yes. And I mean, all this talk about being comfortable, though, is a very modern kind of concept, isn't it? You know, there's no guarantee that you're going to go through life being comfortable, I'm afraid. Sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable, and sometimes you're not going to feel very well, and sometimes you're going to be offended, and sometimes things are going to happen that you don't like. You can't legislate for all of that. In the end.
But when I use the word comfort in that case, I'm using it really euphemistically. If somebody has a gender recognition certificate,
I know
is it
how
more
you mean
comfortable
it.
to know that they've been through a more rigorous process?
Yes, I
to
know how you
acquire
mean
it.
it. But, there are all sorts of situations where people find themselves feeling uncomfortable about something that's going on. And I just think it's a dangerous precedent for a government to try and set. And I think, without wishing to bring in the dreaded COVID word, this is the kind of thing that follows from this kind of ridiculous, overbearing, interfering government that we've had over the past 2 years, much worse in Scotland than here in England. But, this is where they go, because they go, oh, we'll just make another law about it, shall we? Well, how about you don't make another law about it? How about you just, get the hell out of the bedroom, or get out of the hospital, wherever it is that you want to, put your nasty little hands in. Stay away. Sorry.
No, I'm honestly, I'm flabbergasted that it's International Women's Day and the Scottish Government is proposing a reform to a bill that would mean that any man can say he's a woman on his own say-so, without seeing a doctor, with a very low bar, a very low threshold, and the impact that will have on women-only spaces. There are other countries in the world right now where they'll be arguing for women-only spaces, women's toilets, etc. And we're actually talking about changing the law in devolved Scotland so that women don't have that protection.
Yeah, I know. Bonkers, isn't it? Mad. Let's talk about Mr. Trudeau and why he's here. Why is he here?
Or two-faced Trudeau, as I like to call him. So we've seen pictures in the media this week of Justin Trudeau sitting in a meeting with Keir Starmer, and they're both wearing black masks. Very masculine, sitting down in a meeting with their black masks on.
Do you think it's significant that the mask is black?
Well, like they haven't gone to
It's a sort
pink,
of
have
Zorro
they?
type thing.
More bandit-like. I don't know. No, you must have noticed men tend to wear black masks.
I haven't really, no.
Haven't you?
No. I mean, I don't see a lot of black masks, to be honest. I mean, I don't see many masks at all these days, thankfully.
Well, thank goodness. Apart from Trudeau and Keir Starmer, who are keeping up the whole pantomime together in their meeting.
Well, I saw Trudeau coming into a room with Boris and that bloke from Holland, as I call him. Can't remember his name. Mark somebody, I think. Anyway, the wrong direction, as I'm going to call the three of them. And he was wearing a mask. The other two were not. Trudeau sits down, takes the mask off. And you're going, what are you doing? Is it some kind of show you're about to do?
Well, he's either disingenuous or he's stupid, and neither's a good look, really.
It could be both.
But in the same week, we've seen these images of him wearing masks to meet political leaders. He's meeting our 95-year-old Queen with no mask on.
Mask.
Now, I think this is perfectly fine. They've both had COVID and they're both vaccinated.
Yeah.
So, I mean... And the mask doesn't do anything.
Right.
So I think that's fine.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that he will not wear a mask with the Queen, but will with Keir Starmer.
Yes.
And it's just the absolute epitome of what a two-faced man this leader of Canada is.
He is.
Because not only that, this week he's talking about how the world needs to stand against authoritarianism and democracy being in decline. But this is the man who froze the bank accounts of protesters who were protesting against his onerous vaccine mandates, and not only that, but froze the bank accounts of people donating to the protesters. And he has the brass neck to talk about authoritarianism.
It's got the same level of hypocrisy for me as the Russian embassy in Dublin yesterday, who complained about the fact that somebody drove a car through their gates, describing it as an act of wanton violence. And you're going, sorry? What?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Exactly. It's hard to know what planet some people are on.
Yes.
So the sooner we see the back of Trudeau, the better. But that I mean, it's so funny calling the wrong direction. Seeing that poster that Nadeem Zahawi has shared on social media of the bloke from Holland, Boris Johnson, and Justin Trudeau walking down the street in a boy band-esque
You sort of want them
style.
to be doing it to the tune of Staying Alive, don't you? You know, that John Travolta kind of, swagger. They haven't got it.
I don't think it would be as cool as Staying Alive. What are the three of them doing together? It's like they're the boys in the playground that nobody else wants to play with. It's the most weird little trio of world leaders, isn't it? What am I missing?
Well,
Why
all
do
of
they
these
belong
politics,
together?
because they're all geeks, that's what they are. But they think they're interesting geeks, and never go near people who think they're interesting because they're geeks, and that means they're not very interesting actually at all. They just think they're interesting because most of the other people around them are even less interesting than they are.
They all did long, hard lockdowns as well.
They did. Boris didn't want to, though. He did it with a heavy heart. Remember that? I do it with a heavy heart, really.
That's why he's at the front. He's in the middle.
Oh, look, they're on TV again. Oh, actually, it's our TV they're on. That's very good. They're playing it as we speak. This is the great value of Talk Radio TV now. Now, we're going to talk about the bonfire of PPE coming up in a minute. Laura Dodsworth is here. There they are. Wrong direction. It's great, isn't it? They're in the wrong order. They should be in ascending order, so Boris should be on the far left, even though he's not. This is Talk Radio.